Hello class, I hope you are all right. I know it's been a while since I made a video. Some classes have had videos before, and for other classes, this is the first video that you are going to watch. So I decided to make a video about the next lesson. I want you to watch it and then I will give you some work. I would like to talk about the fact that I know that some of you are a bit scared because of the tests that happened. It's important for you to log in every day on It's Learning. You have to check It's Learning every day, morning and afternoon or evening, okay? The results of the test are not going to be in the report, but it's your attitude towards the test, towards the homeworks, towards the tasks that are going to be discussed at the conseil de classe. So be careful about that. I know it's a weird period with the strike going on, with I know that some teachers give you some work, others don't. Maybe some teachers give you a lot of work, others don't. I know it's a bit weird, but we have to adapt. And I'm pretty sure that in your life you are going to have other moments where you will have to adapt to unforeseen events. Okay, it's going to be all right though. And we are going to talk about Knowledge 13. Hooray, this is the last knowledge of the year. It's about evolution of cities. You can find that knowledge on It's Learning. For those who haven't checked out your group of It's Learning, there is a section called Resources. So when you are on It's Learning, I'm going to open it. I know it's the end of the year, but better late than ever. So you go to, for example, your group, you have something called Resources. You click on Resources and you have all the units, you have the Kahoots, you have things about the Christmas exams, you have some of the teachers' answers, you have some lessons that are completed by me. I hoped I could do more if I go back to school. If I have the access to school again, I will for sure scan the rest of my answers. You go to Unit 4 and then you have all of the lessons, all the things I have published in the recent weeks and the recent days, okay? And so Knowledge 13 is over here, Evolution of a City. You can open it, you can complete the information within the PDF if you have a computer, or you can write it down, or if you on a spare sheet, or if your parents or you have access to a printer, you can print it and then you can do the highlighting and you can complete the things that are in the lesson. So, Knowledge 13, Evolution of Cities. Yes, I say hi to the parents. Some students told me that they were watching the videos with their parents. So hello, mom and dad, or stepmom, stepdad. I hope you are going to enjoy the lesson as well. I'll remind you the two colors that I'm using, pink for the things you must know by heart and yellow for the things you must know with your own words. The first chapter is about cities during antiquity. So I'll remind you, antiquity started after the invention of writing around 3200 BC in some of the regions of the world. We're talking about Italy, Greece, Asia, South America. We have now cities that start to develop thanks to human activities. So here we are, cities that develop thanks to human activity. So they started in antiquity. Depending on the region and their needs, cities developed in very different ways. You have some examples here. Okay, so if you think about cities in antiquity, we have some cities in Europe that still have traces of what the city used to look like in antiquity. For example, if you go to Rome, if you think about Rome, if you think about Greece, if you think about the southern countries, you have sometimes some buildings that are still present, sometimes in ruins, sometimes they are very well preserved, it depends. And you can see that you have other examples here. You have here the lost city of Nazca in Peru. It doesn't exist anymore. You have here the city of Uruk in Iraq. It doesn't exist anymore. It's very hard for these cities that are sometimes several hundreds or thousands of years old to still exist, because there is time that is going on. You have wars, you have the weather that sometimes just destroy the cities. Rome is pretty well preserved. And so we are going to talk about cities during the Middle Ages. But before that, I'm going to show you, from time to time, I'm going to show you videos, okay? I'm going to post them as well. We have the first video, which is Paris, how Paris evolved from 300 BC until today, from the upper point of view, from an aerial point of view. And we have another video, the evolution of Paris, but from the ground, from ground level point of view and in a horizontal way. These videos are made with the artificial intelligence, okay? So they are created based on real information. They are quite correct, okay? From a history point of view, they are quite good. Let's start with the first one. You are going to see, you see the years that are going here. Here we go, and this is the start. This is the Celtic era. We are at the beginning, and then we have the Roman era. Okay, you can see here that the Romans are starting to create some, neighborhoods, parts of the city, because in 52 BC, the Romans invaded Gaul. Okay, so we were invaded as well by Julius Caesar around 50 BC, and France as well. This is 250 years after the Romans arrived, and so we had in Paris quite a good settlement of Romans. From this point of view, you can see that we have people that start to build, huts and then tents. And then you have a few buildings made out of wood, okay? You start to see here Romans that are coming. You have an aqueduct over here. You have an aqueduct over here. And the Romans are making war. We are in 53 BC and they are starting to settle. And you can see here, this is what we call a Roman villa. A villa means a house, okay? This is Roman occupation. They are building other things. You can see Roman soldiers, etc., etc. So we are going to stop over there. We are going to move forward on this until the fall of the Roman Empire, which marks the end of antiquity. It's a Roman era, and then you can see that the Romans are moving away, and we enter the Frankish era, the era of the Franks. Same here. You can see that life is going on. And then 476, this is the fall of the Roman Empire. And you can see that it changes a bit. All the Roman buildings are not used as they used to be. We have other people here. You can see also the evolution of transport. You now see carts and carriages. Let's go back to the lesson. We are entering the time of cities during the Middle Ages. In our regions, after the fall of the Western Roman Empire in 476 AD, humans continued to live in villages. But it's really after the 11th century, remember, X and Y, it's the 11th century. So during the Middle Ages, humans developed agricultural techniques that enabled them to sell food surplus. The economy started growing and permitted the development of villages into cities. So before the 11th century, we are not talking about cities. We still talk about villages. Okay, these are big villages, but we start to talk about cities from the 11th century. And so the early medieval cities, we have the 11th century, you have an image, okay? So this is how it started, early medieval cities in the 11th century. You can see here that we have an image. I'm going to show the image like this. You can see that we have like a church, because yes, Middle Ages is about religion, it's about Christianity. Every village had a church, and of course every city had a church, and over time they had multiple churches, many churches. Some of them turned into cathedrals, etc., etc. You can see on this image that you have houses, you have a church, and you still have fields. You have fields inside, close to the church and close to the houses, and around it you have a wall. Okay, I'm going to use this. You can see that we have a wall that used to be made out of wood, that over time is going to be replaced with stones. You have here roads that are going through the city, in and out, between cities, between villages. You still have here groups of houses that are close to the fields. Okay, these are villages. Okay, people remained in villages during medieval times, and some people were moving or already were born in cities. You have here another village with a church, and you have plenty of fields. You can see here that the forest is cut down and replaced by the fields. So this is what I've just said. You take the color yellow, and so in the early medieval cities, you have high defensive walls or ramparts, les remparts. Un rempart, c'est un mur de défense. Un mur de défense contre les attaques ennemies, un mur de défense contre les gens de l'extérieur, les bandits, mais aussi les ennemis. Okay? If you remember the Middle Ages, there are a lot of conflicts, a lot of wars that are happening. And so high defensive walls to protect the city. That's the function of the walls. Inside the walls, the medieval cities are disorganized. Okay, you have many people that live there. We know that in some medieval cities you had even more people that used to live there than we have today. So they are overcrowded. Okay, there is a lot of people. It's not well organized. The people are building the houses where they find some room. You don't have sewers. Je vous rappelle qu'il n'y avait pas d'égout, de système d'égout. Il n'y avait pas d'eau courante. Il n'y avait pas d'électricité. And so in medieval cities, it used to be quite dirty. Okay, some people were just throwing the garbage and everything in the streets by the window, and they are not well organized. There are still small villages around, and these villages, they belong to the medieval city. If you remember, we talked about feudality, okay, la féodalité. These are the villages that depend and they belong to the medieval cities. And in case of attacks, the people from the villages could find a refuge, could find shelter and security inside the medieval cities and inside the wall of protection. And there are a lot of fields to grow crops, so it's for agriculture. around the defensive walls and inside the defensive walls. So these are the early medieval cities until the 13th century. I continue the video here so you can see that we are at the early Middle Ages. You can see that the city is quite small, and then we have invasions. Oh, and we have an ad. Remember? Advertising about Carrefour. Awesome. Jesus. Sorry, guys.
Pour l'aventure, avec Carrefour, épargnez jusqu'à 60% sur plus de 70 activités. Carrefour.
Dites oui à l'été,
Jesus.
au tissu léger et aux coupes décontractées, aux looks d'été pour tout le monde et aux robes des 29,99 €. L'été vous appartient, c'est...
Allez, zo. Okay, thank you. And so we have invasions. We have invasions from the Vikings, okay? We had invasions from a lot of people. And now we are getting closer to the early medieval cities. You can see that people start to build houses using stones, using wood as well. And you can see here that we start to have big churches. It's probably going into a cathedral. You still have crops and fields over here inside the city. You can see that there are a lot of beasts, cattle. You have knights on horses with armor. We have markets as well, guys. Yes, history of commerce. There are market stands over here. And then the city is starting to evolve little by little, just like this. And you can see that the roads are made out of mud. You don't have paved roads. It's really muddy. And you have a lot of people. You have carriages with horses. You have here a blacksmith. And you have here, this is a banner. This is a coat of arms from Guild. And so we are getting close. Haha. Have you seen here? This is the Templar. C'est un Templier. This is the time of the Crusades. All right. And so here, around the 13th century, we now try not to have crops anymore inside the city. We build houses where we used to have fields, where we used to have greenery. Now we start to build houses in all the places that are available. Let's look at it from the satellite or the aerial point of view. The Frankish era, you can see that Paris is growing. You have villages over here. This is the medieval era, and you can see here that this is the building of a big wall, but we already have a wall over here. Okay, and so you can see that a building is starting to be built, a wall is starting to be built around the city that is still, expanding. We are going to talk about this wall. Here we are. So, the city becomes too small around the 14th century. At the end of the 13th century, it was the case already. We start to talk about medieval cities, and the city becomes too small. On the image, you can see here that in the center, in what used to be here, the city with the first defensive wall, now we don't have room anymore. Okay, we don't have crops, we don't have agriculture anymore. We have a lot of houses. We still have a church that is probably bigger, that became a cathedral. And we have walls. And then you can see that we have another wall. We still have crops in that area. We have houses. We have gates. Okay, we have tower gates. On a des tours qui permettent l'entrée dans la ville. We still have villages here on the outside, and you can see that they are evolving as well. We had just a few houses, 2 houses over here, and you can see that we start to have a few more houses. Okay, and we still have a lot of crops. We still have a lot of agriculture around the city. So let's put some things here in highlighter. As more and more people lived inside the walls, the city grew and the old medieval town became too small. Old medieval town became too small. There was not enough space for everybody inside the high defensive walls, so people started living outside of it. And before the 14th century, people living outside the walls were not yet protected. So we had here, you don't see that there were houses because this is the 11th century, but over the decades and over the centuries, we had houses that started to be built outside the first defensive wall. They were not protected until the 14th century, where we start to build this second defensive wall. And so, after the 14th century, medieval cities had two features. We are talking about the inner suburb. Inner, it means inside. When we talk about the, in my inner self, ça veut dire en moi-même. Inner, it means inside. Suburb is somewhere where you live. Okay, so suburbs can also be used in English for, in America, when we talk about the suburbs, we are talking about nice neighborhoods outside of the city, pretty expensive. Les suburbs, c'est la banlieue, d'accord? La banlieue, suburb en anglais, ça a une idée, enfin ça nous renvoie à l'idée, par exemple, de l'Amérique avec la banlieue, avec les grandes maisons, les beaux jardins, les belles pelouses. Mais plutôt en Europe, quand on parle de la banlieue, on va plutôt penser à l'extérieur de Paris, des endroits pas très riches où il y a des grands immeubles et ce genre de choses. Il faut savoir qu'au Moyen-Âge, quand on parle de la banlieue, d'accord, on parle de quelque chose qui est à une lieue qui est au banc de la ville. Donc ça veut dire à l'extérieur du centre de la ville. And so the inner suburb is something new. This is the space between the first and the second wall. This part of the city is less dense, okay? You have less houses, and they are cultivable lands. And so, the second defensive wall, le deuxième rempart, le deuxième mur de défense, now, that second defensive wall protects the new houses of the inner suburb and the agricultural lands. So, inner suburb, it's this area. Donc, la banlieue intérieure, inner suburb, c'est la zone entre le premier et le deuxième mur de défense. Okay? And the second defensive wall is the second defensive wall. Okay? So, we are going to watch the videos. You can see here that you have the second defensive wall that is built. You still have agricultural purpose here. And you have here the wall. Okay, the first defensive wall is starting. Sorry, I got mistaken. This is the first defensive wall. It starts to fade little by little and it's replaced here by the second defensive wall. You can see that we have now a lot of houses, okay? We are in the 17th century. This is the modern times. And the city of Paris is still expanding. You can see we have here up. Do you see what it is here? This is Versailles, okay? We have here the beautiful gardens of Versailles, etc., etc. We have other things here outside of Paris, and it's starting to explode and to expand tremendously. And here we are just going to stop just before the French Revolution, because we are going to see from the other point of view how the cities are evolving. Yes, we have here people burning on a stake. It was the Christian people that were hunting the witches. So it's the Inquisition. C'était l'Inquisition. And now these are the days of the Black Plague. Donc on avait la peste noire. And now it is still moving, okay? So you can still see that we have people that have their workshops outside of it. And then we start to have here other invasions, you know, Spain. We have other... Jesus. We have other invasions of other countries.
Le pain, c'est du sucre. Les pâtes,
and we don't have to watch the...
Le riz,
okay, ignorer. And then life goes on. We are in the 15th century. You can see that transport is evolving as well. The architecture is evolving as well. We now have streets that are yet not paved. And we start to have here an image about night in the cities, how they used to be. They are quite lively, okay? There is a lot of life. And then here, this is the war between the Protestants and the Catholics, okay? These are the modern times conflicts about religion. Transport is still evolving, little by little. And it goes on. This is the 17th century. And again, you can see that the city is more and more crowded. You have a lot more people living inside the city. You have more and more transportation, and we are getting close to the French Revolution and the contemporary period. They are renovating here some buildings. We are about to reach it. Still the modern times. The fashion is evolving as well. Come on. French Revolution. We're getting close. Here we are. This is the French Revolution. You have guillotines. Over here, you have the flag. And then it starts to be the Napoleonic Empire. You can see a lot of people from the Napoleonic time period. Still have executions. And then this is also about Napoleon. We are getting close to the end of Napoleon. And we start to see new buildings over here. You can see that the buildings are evolving, and we have more and more of them that are being rebuilt. Okay, now we are talking about... So, we are going back here until the early contemporary period. This is the modern era, then the Napoleonic era. We start to build things here. And see, look at the expansion of Paris. We start to see here train stations, okay? Around the 1820s, we start to have trains, okay? Belgium was one of the first countries to have trains. Here in Paris, they will have trains a little later than Belgium. Here we are, you can hear the train sound. We have a lot more train stations. Let's go back here. So, cities during the contemporary period. We are going to start about the Industrial Revolution and industrial cities. So, it has changed a lot. You can see the first defensive wall is no longer there. It is replaced by something. Ça ressemble à un mur, mais ce n'est plus un mur. Les remparts ont été abattus et ils vont être remplacés par des boulevards, okay? Des grandes rues. Okay? And we have still a very dense city in the heart of it. And then the second defensive wall is also put down and replaced by boulevards. And we start to see here train stations. Okay, this is the time of train. Okay, you have a train station over here. We also have factories, and the factories are outside the city because they are so big and there is no room left inside the city to welcome the big factories. They have to go outside the city. You still have here some green areas, and number one is about the suburb, la banlieue. We are going to talk about it. So let's take the colors. During the 19th century, we have the Industrial Revolution. The economy developed and cities massively and rapidly developed. They grew massive and very, very fast. Okay, we have seen this in the video. The number of people living in the city constantly increases. If you remember, it's been a while, but in January we talked about the evolution of villages. We said that in the contemporary era, during the Industrial Revolution, a lot of people left the villages in favor of the cities because there were factories, and people that used to live in the cities usually had more money. It was not easy, okay? It was not an easy job. It was not an easy work. But the peasants, the people that used to work in agriculture in the villages thought that this would have been a better outcome for a living, you know. And so the cities grew very big. The old defensive walls are demolished and they are replaced by boulevards, by big roads to allow the population to live and to move from one part of the city to the other. The old medieval cities became industrial cities, and they have new features. We now have the suburb, donc la banlieue, the suburb. The suburb is the area outside the second wall where the new working class lives in terraced houses. Be careful, don't get mistaken between inner suburb and the suburb. Inner suburb is in between the two old defensive walls during medieval times, while the suburb is just outside the walls. Ne confondez pas. Inner suburb et suburb. Inner suburb, c'est cette zone entre les deux murs, les deux remparts, le premier et le deuxième rempart, d'accord? C'est le inner suburb, c'est la banlieue intérieure. Par contre, quand on parle de suburb, de la banlieue, on parle de la zone qui est en dehors du deuxième mur, même si le mur disparaît et est remplacé par un boulevard, on parle de cette zone-ci, d'accord? On parle de tout ce qui est construit en dehors de ce qui était le deuxième mur, le deuxième rempart. Ne confondez pas. We also have factories. So, Industrial Revolution is a time of factories. The factories, they are built around the city next to the suburbs. The factories are close to the suburbs because the people that live in the suburbs are usually working class. Ce sont souvent les ouvriers à l'époque qui vivaient dans la banlieue, à l'extérieur de la ville, et qui travaillaient dans les usines. Donc c'était facile pour eux, ils habitaient tout près des usines, et donc c'est pour ça que le suburb, la banlieue, accueillait des personnes ouvrières qui travaillaient dans les usines qui étaient relativement proches. And we also have railways and train stations. They are built next to the city. along the old medieval wall, and it's for transportation and communication with industrial cities. Okay, so this is, you remember the lesson about commerce. The Industrial Revolution is also the start of the mass retailing, mass production. This is the start of consumerism. Okay, so these trains and train stations are very important. So we have here the train station and the factories that are over here. Let's watch the video. So you can see that it is expanding during the industrial era, and even outside of Paris you have other villages that are now becoming cities, and you can see that they are communicating with one another. And Paris used to be this, and it's growing and growing and growing until we arrive in the 2000 era. We still have, you can still see here the outside defensive wall. You can still see the trace of the inner wall. And so let's watch the other video over here. This is the Industrial Revolution. We start to install sewers. On commence à installer les égouts dans Paris. We have public lighting. On a maintenant l'éclairage public, qui était d'abord au gaz et qui devient l'électricité.
Multibiotics Complete, la seule formule 3 en 1 qui combine 18 souches de bactéries vivantes avec 18 vitamines et minéraux.
Je suis désolée pour les pubs, mais c'est
une formule multivitaminée 3 en 1 pour soutenir votre énergie et immunité.
Allez, Adobe. Allez, ignorer. And so now you can see that we have paved streets. You can see the typical design of Paris. Okay, donc on a vraiment ici l'architecture de Paris. We start to have boulevards, and the Eiffel Tower starts to be built. You can see the Eiffel Tower that is built little by little. You can see that the fashion is changing. And about commerce, we have a lot of specialized stores. Okay, le bazar du quartier, etc. C'est l'ancêtre du tram. Vous vous souvenez, le tram était tiré par les chevaux. Okay, these are horse-pulled trams. And then this is the start of something that is being built. You are going to see what it is. Metropolitan. This is the metro. This is the subway and cars. We have cars now that are starting to appear. It was a big flooding. Okay, so Paris was completely underwater at the beginning of the 20th century. And then they started to rebuild it, and we have a lot of cars. And this is 1914. This is the First World War. We were invaded by Germany. This is 1919. We were freed of the Germans. And Paris is still evolving, and then we have a lot of people in the 20s, the 1920s, just after the First World War. More cars, always more cars. We start to see advertising. Look, you have different elements about advertising, about commerce, and we start to have electricity pretty much everywhere in the city. We are getting close to the Second World War. This is a policeman, okay? You had policemen doing, signs for the cars. And then 1939, this is the Second World War, the invasion of Germany for the second time with the Nazis. And then 44, this is the liberation with the Americans. And it's still, we have trams here. These are the ancestors of trams. Okay, they were like buses. It's still evolving, the 1950s. The cars are evolving as well. And then we start to put also a little more greenery. 1963. And then it's going to look very similar to what we know today. We have motorcycles, the cars are evolving. Yeah. And so from now on, will not be a lot of differences from what we know today, except a lot of traffic and traffic jams. Now the Franprix over here, it's a corner shop, it's a supermarket. You have a lot of corner shops, you have a lot of shops in general. And then 2020, this is the COVID. Okay, nobody is in the street anymore. Until today, if you go to Paris today, this is going to look like this. Maybe a little more dirty, if you ask me. Yes, this is a provision, 2090. You are going to see it, I will be dead. You are going to tell me, okay? I will keep an eye on you about how Paris is going to look like and how your life is going to look like. So, this is it. Then, the post-industrial cities, we have seen it in the video. So, it's after 1950 until today. You have here 1, 2, 3, 4. We are going to talk about it. Since 1950, almost everybody uses a car. There are a lot of cars. We now have the communication axes, like highways, like roads that develop. And the access between cities are, now the access is easier. So we are now large post-industrial cities with a dense population. Our cities have a lot of inhabitants. This is one of the big differences between villages and cities. There are a lot of people living in cities and there are fewer people living in villages. There are new features. We have modern highways. On a des autoroutes. Number 4, and large outskirts et des extérieurs de la ville. So these are highways and we have outskirts over here, residential outskirts. And the old features are going to change names. Be careful. We are now going to talk about historic center. Le centre historique. This is the oldest part of the medieval town, inside the first high defensive wall, the historic center. This is the historic center, okay, where you have number 1. Even in Liège, we have an historic center, le centre historique de Liège. This is the oldest part of Liège. This is the part of the city where we have la place du marché, la place Saint-Lambert, la rue Hors-Château, and all of these areas. This is what we call the historic center. The historic center had different names before. It was called over here, over here, this is the city. So what used to be the city inside the first defensive wall was the city at the beginning of the Middle Ages. It was still the city, you know, the heart of the city, later in Middle Ages, and it started here to be, renovated. But it is still the city, and now we call it the historic center. Then we have the other element, which is, in pink, the city center, le centre-ville. This is the old inner suburb between the two ancient medieval walls. Number 2, outside the historic center and inside what used to be the second wall. This is what we call now the city center. But before, this area, we called it the inner suburb. Donc, ce qu'on appelait à l'époque médiévale le inner suburb, donc la banlieue intérieure, aujourd'hui, on l'appelle le centre-ville. Sainte-Véronique, okay, the whole neighborhood of Liège-Guillemins is considered now the city center. Ça reste le centre-ville, Sainte-Véronique, d'accord? On n'est pas dans la partie historique de Liège, mais on est dans le centre-ville, okay? And we have the suburb or the outskirt. Là aussi, ne vous trompez pas, d'accord? Suburb, outskirt, ce sont des synonymes, d'accord? It's the modern part of the city. This is the most recent part of the city. You have factories, airports, shopping centers, and residential areas. The suburb or the outskirts, les extérieurs de la ville. This is number 3, okay? You have here factories, you have, I'm going to use this, you have here people that are living close to offices. You have also big areas, etc., etc. Okay? Ça, ce sont les suburbs ou les outskirts. Donc, c'est à l'extérieur de la ville. So, that's it. I'm going to make a video about the exercises. Okay? This is it for the theory. If you want to watch the videos again, this is Evolution of Paris fixed camera time-lapse, and the other one is Paris 3D time-lapse. Okay, you can watch them. So I'm going to give you a task, okay, about this lesson and this video. So stay tuned, okay? Log in every day on It's Learning. Bye-bye, guys.